Lonely, I am so lonely. I have nobody on my own. Remember that song? I think it's Akon. I'm gonna have to look it up later. Today I wanted to talk about loneliness along the spiritual journey and why it could feel isolating and kind of what a paradox it is. So here we go. So if you feel lonely along your journey of spirituality, I want you to know that you are not alone. That's one aspect of the paradox. The other one is that it's so funny because when you become spiritual, and before I go into it, I know spiritual has like mixed connotations. So I guess I want to explain what I mean when I say spiritual. Because I think when people hear spiritual, they think either this is some kind of holier than thou persona, or it's this tree hugger, woo-woo, hippie, dippy stuff. Astrology, all this kind of, when I use that term, it's because I don't consider myself religious. I do believe in God. But I have a very detached approach to life, I guess, that I don't become attached to any one philosophy or lifestyle way of thinking. And a lot of people do. A lot of people make their layers of their personality. I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but basically, like, I'm pretty cautious about how I use I am statements, for example. And that's not to say I never slip up and say, I am tired, I am hungry, I am bored. That's the other thing is, I could go on and on about this spiritual nonsense that goes on where people are like, love and light, and you have to dress a certain way and be a certain way and talk a certain way and all this nonsense that has nothing to do with being spiritual. When I say spiritual, I am referring to the perspective, like a higher perspective on life. That's the simplest way I could explain it. Where I am looking at things from a spiritual plane of existence. But doing so in a way that's not too attached to that, in a way that's stroking the ego. Because that's the other thing is, like, a lot of us, our first experiences with spirituality comes through religion. And then some people get away from religion. They say, oh, that's too oppressive. You're putting me in a box. it's a scam, it's a business, it's not aligned. I'm gonna be spiritual. And then what they end up doing is applying that same energy of making it their personality, but just in a different thing. So now they're spiritual. And what's like the spiritual starter pack? You wear all white, you're like love and light and have this aura of calm and peace at all times. And what's the other stereotypical thing that they do? They'll probably be vegan or vegetarian. Definitely into like yoga, meditation, these kind of sound baths and drum circles, you know, like, and they just carry themselves with this like energy, like it's subconsciously, there's a superiority complex there a lot of times. I noticed. It's like, oh, good vibes only. Like I want to protect my energy. Like I can't be around these energy vampires. And the funny thing is that the reason I say the more spiritual you are, the more alone you feel is because at the root of true spirituality is rooted in love and union. So union with self and union with the collective, right? So when you have a spiritual perspective, you understand that the 3D plane is just one plane of existence and is, I don't want to say the least significant, but there's more to life than what is in the 3D. And some people are very attached to the 3D, and it causes a lot of disharmony because it's like you're ignoring 90% of what is actually reality while telling yourself that you're being realistic. You know, we all know those kind of people. So I'm laughing because it's like the whole point, right, is that eventually you will come to the realization and then the embodiment of this. Because once you see things from this perspective, I guess you could go back to the other way and just repress that, but it would be very difficult once you truly awake. But I noticed that some spiritual people will have this pride in it where they're like, oh, I'm woke, and like these sheep, these NPCs are just over here. And the funny thing is that everyone you meet is you, right? We're all mirrors of each other, and we're all unique expressions of one entity, of source, of God, right? So I can't stop laughing because two things. One, when you have this perspective, it becomes actually almost impossible to relate to most other people, unless they also have this perspective, because you can only meet someone where they're at, right? So if you're operating from the perspective of union versus separation, you all you see is you. Like, it's the universe, right? Everything is reflected. The outer world is basically your inner world reflected out, back to you. And this can cause a cascade of existential crises, however you pluralize that. I don't even know if that's a word, but this isn't a grammar class, okay? This isn't even a class, okay? So my experience has been that the more spiritual I feel, the less relatable I feel, and the less I'm able to relate, despite having this perspective that we're all one. And so it's like a funny paradox, right? Because, and I can talk to anyone, and I don't look down on anyone or think, because when you have this perspective, it becomes silly to judge others or to look at other people as the problem of things, because we're all one, right? So if I'm over here interacting with someone and I'm annoyed by them or displeased with their behavior, it all points back to me, right? So it's just funny because it almost removes all conflict, because it's a deep understanding that's beyond like empathy. Because I believe that empathy is rooted in something similar, but sometimes empathy can also have fear mixed in, because a lot of empaths, or someone who, that's the other thing, is like these labels, like I'm an empath, they're a narcissist. There's really these polarities and differences, and any separation that we can determine between us only exists in the 3D, because outside of that, we're all one. So getting fixated on the behavior of others and labeling them as these things, like, we all have, first of all, we have more in common than we have separate. We're just not looking at it that way usually. But also, like, that's another one where I am an empath and this narcissist is like, and then you're like on Google looking up narcissism and the traits and the this and the that, and the funny thing is that we all have narcissistic tendencies, right? So while that person's behavior may be an extreme expression of that, it's really pointing to something within. And that's uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable. So, and like, I don't want to seem insensitive or like dismissive of people's struggles, but yeah, it's hard, because it's hard to accept that you are the co-creator of your reality, and like everything around you is manifestation of your inner world. That's a hard pill to swallow. I'm not gonna lie. That's a hard pill to swallow. And it can cause like an existential or identity crisis, because that's a lot of ownership and accountability that a lot of people are not ready for. But it's empowering. Like, everything around you is technically within your control. And what I mean by that is like, okay, obviously I didn't control the fact that it snowed the other day, like, to my knowledge, but maybe collective energies, and I don't know how all that works, but that's another level. But if I'm in control of my inner world and my emotional landscape and how I choose to relate to others from a non-reactive place, then everything is in my control in terms of how I experience it. Because everything is a matter of perspective. And spirituality is just a higher perspective. But I think that some folks get it misconstrued that higher perspective means better perspective. And I can't be better than anyone because we're all one. So that would be silly of me to sit on my high horse and think that. So this causes, I don't know that many people. This is what is causing. It's not even loneliness. It's just hard for me to relate to other people in this deep way, because so few people are carrying this perspective. And that can cause feelings of isolation. And if you feel that way, you feel like you don't belong on this planet, I understand. And at the same time, you're like deeply connected because you're really in tune with what's going on. And then the paradox of being so in tune that you become less relatable. It's very uncomfortable for people to admit that they have control over their reality and that everything, it's low-key saying everything's your fault, like all your problems, like you are your problem. Because one, if you're looking at a problem, then you're focusing on the negative and you're not focusing on the solution, which is a choice. And everything exists on a spectrum. So, and there's duality to everything. All truths are half truths. So if you see it as a problem, you're choosing to focus on this side of the continuum, if you will, instead of focusing on the solution or just the neutral perspective of this is an event that happened that I am attributing a negative connotation to. Everything begins with your state of consciousness and vibration that you are emitting. So, and that's not to say, like, I think that's another misconception where people think that since you're spiritual and you have this higher perspective, that you can't have any negative thoughts. But I just want to soothe your mind and let you know that I have negative thoughts all the time. We all do. The difference is when those thoughts come up, how are you emotionally reacting to them? Because your emotional body and states and your heart is the most powerful part of you. So it doesn't really matter if you have a negative thought, if you're able to transmute it into something at the very least neutral and then bring it to positive. You know, it's hard, like when we're in the trenches of things that are testing us, you know, that's how the best way to look at negative events is they are testing to see what frequency we're on, or if we are ready to take the higher road, if you will. So it's actually a good thing to be tested, and you will for your whole life. And if you just maintain this mindset that everything is happening for you, not to you, because the other way is so, it's like you're just this floating amoeba and everything's happening to you, and oh, it's the fate, and oh, and divine timing. No. You create your reality. You are the master of your world, if you will. And everything is happening for you. If you don't think of it that way, it's a miserable existence. Like, it really is. And those things, those neutral events that you're labeling negative, are going to continue to control you and run your life. And not everyone is there to see that, especially if you're operating out of survival mode. And it's hard to, when someone tells you, like, think positive. That is annoying, though, that, you know? Because if you are feeling a certain way, it's not healthy to ignore that and pretend that that's not spiritual, and that's not healthy. If you're sad, be sad, you know, just don't get stuck in it. You know, acknowledge, like, I feel sad right now, and what can I do to feel better, to make myself feel better? You know, that's a more healthy approach than just saying, don't be sad, think positive. Like, that's annoying. We do that to ourselves, and then people are like, don't cry. Crying is good. You are releasing emotions that are usually stuck and repressed. Because it's not bad to have, like, all the emotions have a place, and it's better to express sadness than to repress all your emotions. That's a step up. And then once you allow yourself to feel, now you can channel that emotion, because an emotion is just energy in motion. So you have this energy potential, sadness, anger, whatever, like on the lower end. I think that's where we kind of miss the plot, because this love and light BS, like, that's not always going to be true. The waves are going to come, but regardless, underneath, finding the silver lining and the pockets of joy and things to be grateful for. I'm even grateful for having that sadness, because there was a time when I felt numb and I couldn't express any emotions. And now I'm grateful that I have the capacity to express my emotions. So, like, even that simple little paradigm shift, the more you focus on gratitude and all the things that you have, the more whatever you focus on will expand, you know? Anyway, so having all these thoughts and revelations, if you will, can be very isolating, because everyone around you is likely going to attribute whatever's going on in the 3D as evidence that what you're saying is a crock of shit. And it's funny because that evidence is such a small percentage of what exists around us. You know, the electromagnetic field of what the eye can see versus what the mind and the heart can perceive. And all the energy that exists outside of that comprises so much more of what's going on. And so if you want to be realistic, you would be in tune with more of the spectrum than just what the eye can see. But that's what people can get very attached to, is that the 3D, you know. And it's understandable. Again, like, the point of this higher perspective is not to cause more separation. It's never about that, or it shouldn't be about that, but people do. People use it. Anything that is rooted in the notion of you versus me, separation, that is not the truth. That is an illusion. All is one, you know. But you can only meet people where you're at. So, I mean, where they're at. Also where you're at, and it's difficult. You know, even people you love can become really attached to a certain frequency, and it becomes hard to relate because you're not really relating to the person, it's really to the frequency. And that doesn't mean one is better than the other. That's egotistical to think that way. It's just not aligned. It's just not a match energetically. And so it's going to cause friction. And sometimes we make the mistake of like trying to bridge that, make them understand. You can't really come to an understanding if you're on two different frequencies. Like, it's just not gonna, you know, you have to find a way to meet in the middle, you know. So you could lower, or they could higher, or you could kind of like, but as long as it's on a different plane, there's gonna be friction and misunderstandings. As our core beliefs and perception of the world shapes our entire reality. And so I don't know, even if you talk to someone and you say these things, we're all one, and all is love, all is union, and if they look at you like you're insane, it's gonna be very difficult to talk or relate, you know? So that can be isolating. I don't know what percentage of the population is there, but I would venture to guess it's not a super high percentage, at least in my experience of trying to relate to people, you know. And I don't know, it is what it is, I guess, at the end of the day. So if you feel like an alien, or like you struggle relating to people, you're not alone. And it's not, you know, like I will talk to anyone and relate to anyone because I choose to see the commonalities over the differences. But you can't really build a strong bond and connection if there's that energetic block there, you know? So it's like this weird paradox because you're seeing things from a higher perspective and you're open and receptive to the connection and the union, but you can only meet people where they're at. So if they're not open and receptive in that same way, you can only get so far, is what I'm saying. So, and it can feel very isolating, and it can feel like maybe something's wrong with me, maybe I need to change something. And I will say that the best thing you can do is continue to focus within and cultivate that inner union and realize that you are whole and you are perfect as you are, and move through the world with that energy and simply observe, kind of like when you're meditating, you know, you're not trying to like whip the thoughts into shape. You just want to observe what's there and let it be. You know, surrender. That's what surrender truly means. I hope this kind of made sense. I do feel like I'm not alone. I do feel like there's others that would relate to what I'm saying. But I also feel like many won't, and that's fine. But, you know, it can also be hard to not judge or get into your ego with things. So I'm also not judging those that do it. It's just something that I'm aware of, that I want to be mindful of, because the point is not to become some elite spiritual master and look like, it's icky to me to look down on others in any way. That shows really weak character. And I try my best to, even people who have wronged me in some way, I don't want to give them negative energy or wish them any ill will. I think that's a waste of energy, to be honest. Like, I actually want to send them love and compassion and grace and understanding. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to invite them into my world and into my space and continue a relationship or interactions even, you know. There's this element of wanting to protect your energy, but it's not because I think I'm so above them that they don't deserve my energy. That's an icky way to think, honestly. And it's a slippery slope. So, but I noticed that. Oh, the other thing I just remembered from spiritual people is this grand rising. I remember one time I was talking to somebody and they were like offended because I said good morning. Like morning means death and, you know, like M-O-U-R, morning. I was like, give me a break. Like even back then, I didn't know as much as I know now in terms of metaphysical and esoteric knowledge. And even back then, I knew they were full of shit. I was like, the fact that you're triggered by someone wishing you good morning and you're so attached to the words grand rising, which you randomly attributed meaning to, just like the other words were randomly attributed meaning, and you're not, like, it's also about the emotional charge and the intention that you put behind words. It's not just the words. As verbal communication is only one small aspect, there's also body language, there's the intention, there's the energy and vibration behind it and all these things. And to be hung up on the... Whoa. Something fell. I think I know what it is too. I hung up these lights. Well, I did a bad job. I like... I'll fix it later, but I know what I did wrong and I'll fix it. Anyway, so kind of distracted me. This ridiculous notion that if you say grand rise, like, shut up. It's like the stupidest thing ever. Grand rising. Oh, I don't say good morning because blah, blah, blah. Like the devil's just gonna appear and be like, did someone say good morning? I'm just gonna drag you into hell now. Like, shut up. I don't know what they think is the consequence of that, but attachment, again, making it your personality. Like, grand rising. Hello, queen. Hello, king. You know, there was a time when I was like, oh, I guess that's what you're supposed to do. Spiritual, yeah. Oh, I shouldn't eat meat. No. It's just transcending the physical plane. That's it. It's just a higher perspective. When you're looking at things beyond surface level interactions. And not getting attached. Because again, if you're getting attached to the way someone greets you in the morning, you're not spiritual, you're attached to this plane of existence, and you're getting bent out of shape about word choice and semantics. Like, get over yourself. These people, they fight to get out of the box of religion, and then they put themselves into another box called spirituality. And that's why I've always felt that way. When I was vegan, when I had a vegan lifestyle, I don't even know how to, I never said, or rarely, maybe I did, but, don't get too attached. Oh, I am vegan. Like, becoming a personality of a vegan. What is a vegan? I wear paper shoes, and I'm just talking about my love of animals every 5 minutes. Like, please. It's another way for the ego to latch onto something. Let's watch how triggered and offended vegans get. Some vegans. By anything, honestly. Like, is that bringing you peace? To be throwing paint on fur coats? Like, is that the best use of your time? I don't know, that's a whole other side tangent, but it can be very isolating to be vegan. I'm just kidding. To be spiritual. And I just want to share that and let you know that if you feel that way, you're not alone. And it's funny to watch people get triggered over things and then calmly respond and not react. It brings so much peace, you know, to just be like, okay, I observe what is, and it's not like a fake thing. You know, some people are like, oh, good vibes only. No, like, if you want to get bent out of shape about whatever you want to get bent out of shape about, there's free will. If that's how you want to use it, that's cool. I don't have to partake in that, but it's interesting to observe people. Yeah, attachment, you know.